So welcome folks again to our Advocate Action meeting with Laura Greenleaf. I'll give a brief info and then we'll get started. So Laura is a volunteer leader of Dark Sky Virginia, representing the Virginia membership of Dark Sky International. She has led or co-led the chapter since 2013, delivering nearly 50 educational presentations around Virginia, serving as a local hub for advocates and supporting Dark Sky work in Virginia and policy initiatives. Laura holds a bachelor's degree in social work and a master's in public administration with an environmental policy focus. She is a Virginia master naturalist and lifelong conservation advocate who currently works for the City of Richmond, James River Park System, and Friends of James River Park on the Invasive Species Management team. Laura's goal with her public presentation is to expand her audience's understanding of the natural world and our place within it to include the night so that our stewardship supports the necessary transformation for our use of outdoor lighting. Her familiarity with many different communities all over Virginia and involvement in a wide range of projects have helped Laura develop a knack for tailoring this specific approach to dark sky advocacy and generalize it for audiences, purposes, and places. She has learned so much from members and advocates from Virginia's, from the smallest towns to the most populated cities and suburbs. And I look forward to learning and hearing with you the wisdom that Laura can share. And Laura, why don't I hand it over to you?
All right. Unmute. There we go. Okay. Thank you, Chris. I'm going to go ahead and I'm so bad at getting distracted from pop-up messages. Going to go ahead and share screen and just get started. And let's just get to that right now. That was a long introduction, but which I wrote, so that's on me. Okay, here we go. So just I'm talking to you from Richmond, Virginia, 2:00 in the afternoon here, and just amazing to see all those people and places popping up. I always find it, it's just, there's just a buoyancy to attending these meetings and connecting with people all over the world. But so because of that and keeping that in mind, I wanted to make sure that I oriented everyone to Virginia, since that's what I'm going to be talking about, and not make assumptions that everyone is familiar with my state. So there it is, there on the map, as well as a representation of our light pollution, which also shows surrounding states and as well as the District of Columbia. But when Betty Maya first asked me to do this, I said, well, I thought, why are they asking me? Because the original pitch was to do a presentation on pitches, elevator pitches. And, I told Betty Maya, I'm really no good at that. Long form presentations and policy memos, absolutely. But so we decided to do something that was more generally about communication and messaging. And then also I wanted to do sort of a Virginia spin on that, because I feel like it's the people I know and parts of my network who are so much better at it. So that's the angle I'm coming from. And why is my there we go. Okay, didn't want to work. So just a brief overview so you sort of know what to expect. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Virginia to get you just oriented, a little bit about our chapter. Then I'm going to talk about just the foundations of messaging, I have to say, old school messaging from my own background. We're going to take a little tour around Virginia to several varied communities, and with some tips. And then if we have time, I thought I would just zip through one of my recent presentations and kind of look at the structure of that, and maybe look at certain topics that people are interested in. So yes, so back to Virginia, some guideposts for where we're headed here. I am probably the worst or most annoying type of Virginian that there is. This is a type, we're a type, meaning that I was born and raised here. I've lived here my entire life. And I'm of an age that I think I now qualify for old timer status. So we tend to be a little prideful about Virginia, so I'll curb that. But we are pretty amazing. So Virginia is only about half the size of the United Kingdom, but it has this extraordinary natural beauty and biological diversity across these 5 physiographic regions, going from the Allegheny Plateau to the coastal plain. So yes, you can drive from the mountains to the ocean in a day. While we're known as being this extraordinarily historical place, that history goes back, human history. We are home to, I believe, 4 federally recognized tribes, indigenous tribes, and 11 state recognized tribes. Philadelphia might want to argue with us, but Virginia is the birthplace of American democracy. This is where we have the longest running legislative body in the world, and we're going strong, as well as known as the mother of presidents, because that is our state legislature there, designed by one of those presidents, Thomas Jefferson. We can claim 8 of them. Virginia has changed rapidly, and that's ties into the increase in light pollution and the increased awareness of light pollution. So our population has doubled since the year I was born. It's very much concentrated in what we call the urban crescent, which takes you from Northern Virginia down Interstate 95 to Richmond and over here to Hampton Roads. Diversity of communities. So our most populous county, Fairfax County, over 1 million people. Least populous county, Highland County, just about 2,000 permanent residents. I think of us as having protected an enormous amount of land. It actually only adds up to about 7%. We are home to a national park. We have Shenandoah National Park over here and over 40 state parks. And the little windows on my screen are hiding it, but you can see that we also are home to 5 dark sky parks here in Virginia, 1 a local park, and 4 are state parks. So we do have dark sky parks to rally around. So a little bit about our chapter. I know there's either chapters that I envy tremendously that are incredibly organized, and they're their own independent organizations, and they have boards of directors. We don't have that. We are pretty old school, including our website. This is our vintage website, circa late 1990s. And I first got involved back in 2011, 2012, and I swear every single year that I write my annual report, I say my goal for the next year is to develop a new website, and I'm eventually going to get there. So this is just to say that you don't have to have really sophisticated digital. Don't feel like you have to immediately build out some incredible digital presence. Those are important tools, and I need to do better with that. Most of it is in my head and in my email. Those are my email files. It's just a giant filing cabinet of contacts and information. So, wherever you are on that scale is great, because what it all comes down to is relationships and connections and community. There's really no substitute for that. So I really think of myself as the hub of a wheel, and we're going to visit some of the spokes on that wheel today. One of them being, and I know Eileen, you're out there on this call, Eileen Craigie, Dark Sky, Northern Virginia, demonstrating, as well as Tom Reiner, who's on the board of directors, in his alter ego up there. This is really what it's about. Being out there and making these human connections in our communities. And it's these kinds of events. I have so few pictures. I couldn't find a single picture of myself at speaking or at an event, but Eileen had lots of wonderful examples of communicating Dark Skies mission out in the community. And in thinking this through, I was considering all the basic contexts in which we communicate as dark sky advocates to try to just get a handle on it. And I realized, that most of the time they fall into these 3 categories. They're under the heading of community, the heading of government, or the heading of the private sector. And most of what we're doing is really community-based. We're out at events like Eileen, or we're speaking to organizations, as I do so frequently. But then also, we're often called to engage in grassroots lobbying with our governments, typically at the local level or the state or provincial level. But we may also be engaging in the private sector, whether those are sort of small or just locally based businesses, or bigger corporations that we're trying to influence to change their lighting products or practices. And the roles and relationships that we take in these situations and contexts are all different, and we have to prepare differently. And I thought, the first thing it comes down to, the distinction is, have we been invited, or are we inviting ourselves? And usually a group has invited, in my case, has invited me to speak at a meeting or an event. And very often it's an organization with an environmental mission. And that's the sweet spot, right? Like, well, that is like the friendliest of audiences. It's a different story if you're trying to get a meeting with your elected representative, maybe to push for or against legislation. Or as an example, there's a group of us here in Virginia that have been pressing a multi-billion-dollar energy monopoly to change their lighting products and services. These are very different circumstances. So who you're talking to and what the circumstances are going to drive your preparation and your message development. And the basics of effective advocacy communication really have not fundamentally changed that much over time. So 20 years ago, I changed careers and I started working for a nonpartisan environmental political organization at the local level. And I learned so much in a really short period of time, which included some excellent trainings in communication at a time, it's only 20 years ago, but this was a time when everybody was really excited about this new thing called a blog. But I still kept some of these materials, and when I pulled them out and looked at them, I thought, this stands the test of time. This is still very relevant. Now, and I'm going to walk through this. Now, bear in mind, these materials from this media company, this consulting firm, this was focused on smart growth and land conservation around 2005. But it's not hard to transfer or extrapolate this to our own mission. So you start with not just like, what do I want to say, right? Which is really a tactic. You start with a strategy of your goals, what you're trying to accomplish, and you walk yourself through these steps. If you have a very specific goal that you're working towards, what needs to happen? Who can make it happen? What's the story they need to hear? Who should they hear it from? Who's the messenger? And how can we tell them? And by the way, I don't remember the association with Jack and the Beanstalk, but that's Jack and the Giant, obviously. And this is exactly what we're always doing from a strategic standpoint. When you get to that point of how can we tell them, what's the story, that's where you get into the messaging. And that's where at that time and the work that I was doing, we were talking about how do you frame growth and development. And we can just as easily say, how do we frame light pollution, responsible outdoor lighting, defending the night, right? So the big box that final box there is about values. What are the values we are trying to evoke? What's the touchstone? What's the connection we're trying to make with things that are universal? Maybe the thing that we share with somebody who may have never noticed that they can't see the stars and may not care. And some of the things that are listed on here, which are about growth and development, also apply to what we're doing. Having options, having choice, having what is fair, what brings about community benefits, having a say in it, having public participation, safety, the safety of our communities. These are all relevant things that we want to be touching on, even if it's not overt. Then within that box, you talk about, well, what's the context in which this is happening? In this particular example, it was about how do we define progress? How are we going to grow as communities? What kind of development are we going to have? And then at the very specific level, it's again, in this particular example, it's what, where, and how to build next. For us, it may be, we need a new outdoor lighting ordinance, and what is that going to be? Or we need our utility to provide better lighting options. So you're building out from a very specific purpose and goal and going out. Now, it also may be, it's just about, we need more people to care, right? We need to incorporate this as a priority along with other things that we're concerned about in our community, and in the situation where you're really focused on public education and outreach. But these are, again, this is just a universal framework for how we communicate. And I'm glad I kept it for 20 years on my bookshelf. Oops, and again, let me reduce my little box there. So, and remember, this was the mantra at this time, and it's true today. Start where they are, and this was specifically in reference to if you are going to meet with an elected official, or you're talking to a group that you want to motivate to join your cause. You don't go barreling in with what you think and what you know. You figure out, you start where they are, and you understand as much about your audience in advance as possible, which is another really important step to, particularly if you're being asked to speak, it might seem self-evident what they want to hear from you, but find out what the people in that particular group are most concerned about, what they want to hear about. And if you're going to be meeting with officials, for instance, and it's so much easier now than it used to be, get as much about their background as you can through whatever the avenues may be, so that you can find out how you might be able to connect with them and make some guesses about what they're bringing to the table. Okay, let's get back to Virginia. So here's Virginia from the light pollution perspective, just to get a sense of, and this is of course accelerated greatly in the past 40 years, but out here on the boundaries with West Virginia, those are our darkest places. And then I mentioned that urban crescent, and here it is with really intense light pollution. So I believe that we do have class 2 skies out there in the highlands, but we're certainly at risk of continuing to slip. And that's where we're going, out to Highland County, to the town of Monterey. Out here, the little star, right on the boundary of West Virginia. This is about a almost 3-hour drive west from Richmond, where I am. It is it's this, as I said, the least populous county in Virginia. It's remote and landlocked by the Allegheny Mountains, where the elevations hit about 4,000 feet above sea level. This historically was a self-sufficient agricultural, very local economy. The population has, in terms of full-time resident, declining, although there have been people often coming back who grew up there, who have family connections there, as well as people arriving from other places seeking a very different lifestyle. For me, and this is a place I'm very familiar with, it's a place I've been visiting frequently for, 12 years now. For me, Highland County and the town of Monterey just define community. It's so, with whatever frictions and tensions may exist, it is also, everybody is pulling for that community. So there's this creative, dynamic energy, trying to find the way forward economically, particularly for Highland County. And because they've got the darkest skies, that is a huge asset. So this is key. This is a place where the skies are starry. You can still see the Milky Way, and that is a known asset to protect and promote. And there is a group, there's a Highland County Stargazers group. And a really important person in that group is a man named Mike Bedwell, who I have now known for over 10 years, that we came, again, just word of mouth, connections got connected. And Mike has been advancing the cause of improving outdoor lighting and protecting Highland County's skies for a long time. So his goals, their goals, community outreach. There is a new state park coming into being in Highland County. And they knew that from the start, they wanted to pursue dark sky park status. So that is a big priority. There's also, he has undertaken a proposal to reform the lighting at the school. So as you can imagine, really small student body overall, all the schools are in one place. And even in this tiny, tiny town, it is extremely overlit. And where they do their stargazing on the top of Jack Mountain, you have a view of Monterey. It's a huge source of light pollution. So there's a whole project, and it's going to involve fundraising if they do green light that, to overhaul the lighting at the schools complex. And then ultimately the objective is to really make Highland County an astrotourism destination. So I asked Mike, what's your elevator pitch, Mike? And Mike, by the way, is a retired teacher and school principal. He taught originally in Highland County. His wife is from Highland County. So, really deeply rooted there. And this is what he sent me. This is what he would say to somebody. How many stars can you see at night? I used to see more too. Did you know that there are simple ways to reduce light pollution and save money at the same time? It's all about having the right light in the right place at the right time. Yes, it is indeed the landowner's right to have the lights they want, but shouldn't it be an informed decision and one that makes you a good neighbor? Dark sky is becoming a big economic draw in a lot of communities. Here's how you can help. And then he mentioned the old teacher in me asks a lot of questions. Again, that's the way of making it about the other person, finding out what they care about, finding out what their concerns are so you can address it. But when I read this, the things that really jumped out at me are the simple ways. This is not complicated, right? This is not onerous and burdensome. It's simple and you can save money. Saving money is a value. Rights, landowners' rights. That's always going to be a pushback in a lot of places, that you can't make any broad judgments about that. And in this particular community with agricultural, a lot of times agricultural lights are exempted from lighting ordinances. That's often a point of contention. So acknowledging that, but then also bringing it back to being a good neighbor. And this is a place where being a good neighbor is very much a value. And then finally, the economic draw, because this is a place that needs to find its way forward economically, and tourism is a crux of that. So he was hitting all the marks with this. So that's one example of a very small town in a very remote place. And now we're going to go east to Charlottesville. And I don't know that I really have that star well positioned there. And by the way, if anybody is on this call from these places, people I know, I hope you'll speak up when we're done, and you can correct me and add to this. So Charlottesville is a place probably a lot of people have heard of, might be familiar with. It is a extraordinarily beautiful, scenic city and very historic. It's home to the University of Virginia. This is just me, generally ahead of everyone else. That's the perception of Charlottesville. Here in Richmond, we're always like, you just sort of sigh and go, Charlottesville, so forward thinking, so action oriented, particularly environmentally. So it's like, if something good is going to happen, yeah, surely it will happen in Charlottesville and the surrounding Albemarle County. So a couple of years ago, a group formed there called Piedmont Dark Skies. And again, grassroots energy, people coming together, very much naturalists, master gardeners, and some people I already knew through a lot of overlap in our interests. So they organized a couple of years ago, and here they are just recently at the Albemarle Board of Supervisors meeting, where the Board of Supervisors approved the IDSW, the International Dark Sky Week proclamation that Piedmont Dark Skies had put forth. And I saw a lot of the emails after that meeting, and it was really heartening and really affirming, because the supervisors, they didn't just do it, to sign the thing and move on. They were really engaged, and they particularly, I know, apparently shared their stories, their own memories, and their of starrier skies. So great, again, successful messaging there. Their goals are, first, they have one of the better lighting ordinances in Virginia, even though all of our ordinances are really out of date. So they just want to get better enforcement of what they have, but they also want to revise the county's comprehensive plan to support a zoning ordinance update. Naturally, public awareness and education encompass everything. And then they are up against an LED streetlight conversion. And they were actually one of the precipitating factors in this coalition group that we've pulled together in the past 6 months to specifically address street lights, lighting from Dominion Energy, which it's a really big, it's an extremely ambitious effort. So those are their priorities. They also, they happen to have in their group, well, they're really lucky to have a lighting professional with like nearly 40 years as a lighting designer, and an urban planning grad student originally who came to Virginia from Florida and was involved in a dark sky community, successful dark sky community there, and who is exploring and doing, I believe, a feasibility study for Charlottesville. So lots of good stuff going on there. And here's some of the language and the messaging that they shared with me. A sample elevator pitch. All living things on this planet have evolved with the predictable cycle of day and night. This is essential to our health and well-being. But with the advancement of inexpensive and efficient LED outdoor lighting, the darkness of the night is disappearing at an alarming rate. And then hitting on some of the impacts from that, obscures our view of the stars, disconnects us from our place in the larger universe. The good news is, with proper planning, we can use LED technology to create community-friendly lighting that works with our circadian rhythms, saves energy, keeps us safe, and is less disruptive to the natural world. So Christine, and sharing this with me, had hit so many things. And again, bearing in mind, this community is motivated by, maybe more motivated than some other communities, to care about the natural world, have a strong environmental ethic. So hitting all of those things, but also notice the language of we, our health and well-being, our place in the universe. And then good news, right? We don't want to be negative. We can't constantly be down, but there's good news, because with proper planning, we can do this well, and we can do this right. And when you appeal to planning and proper planning, when you're talking to local officials, that's their responsibility, that's their job. So that's a hook. Community-friendly lighting is great language. That seems to be just a near universal, that is really, that people like to use and is successful. And again, making sure that you're making the connection for people that community-friendly lighting is better lighting, which is actually safer lighting. All right. We're going to keep moving east, way over to the Atlantic Ocean, to the city of Norfolk in the Hampton Roads region. So this is a coastal region of Virginia. Historically a strategic transportation and military hub, it is home to the largest naval station in the world, has really distinct and diverse neighborhoods, ranging from, really historic neighborhoods to the urban waterfront. So this is a really special story, and could be a presentation in itself, because this is a group, Citizens for Responsible Lighting, that formed entirely in reaction to an LED conversion that began in the fall of 2023 and went, like so many do, really, really badly. And they were actually successful in getting a pause on that conversion to work towards a revision and a better outcome. They have done incredible amounts of outreach. They have spoken to, I think it seems like they're always talking to another group. It's got to be a couple dozen by this time. Civic groups, church groups, neighborhood groups, business groups, environmental groups, you name it. But then also really skillfully and collegially, which is a word they have used that really caught my attention, working with their city officials. So, and partnering with the city to press for this change in the lighting that they're getting and how that whole process has happened. They are also a partner. So before I knew the folks from Citizens for Responsible Lighting, I knew Pat Scanlon from Bird Safe Lights Out Hampton Road. So that was already happening. Again, this is in the migratory flyway along the East Coast. So really significant there, that connection to migratory birds. So again, the importance of partnerships, finding alliances, building coalitions. And so there's Liz, one of the members of CRL, speaking at a meeting. And this was a message going out to the public. This is what this is what I asked her and she told me. City council people listen when they hear there is a health issue from the light. So that was really effective for them in getting the attention of city council. This was also caught my attention. Most residents care about the birds. The other living creatures, not so much. But when I show a slide of dead birds, that gets their attention. That may be because of their relationship to this coastal region and the migratory species. That might be something more universal. So in communications with public officials and with this corporate utility, these are some of the messages that I have heard coming from CRL members that have caught my attention. This is a generational opportunity. So the use of the word opportunity, this is your chance to do something really big and important. We must plan and design for the outcomes and effects of lighting. Again, the idea of planning. Our message is clear, being emphatic, being very, strong. Yes, there are benefits to LED lighting, but the way this is going has been detrimental. It's vital we get this right. And then the personal impact story. And this is an example of, this was an interaction, an exchange with somebody from the corporate energy utility, feeling very good about the lights that they had provided. And this member of CRL said, collector class lights were installed in error on my street. They shine in my bedroom window. It's like being at the entrance to the Midtown Tunnel. So, you're not, you're turning a screw a little bit, but you're making a point. And there are occasions where that's really appropriate and necessary to share that kind of personal impact story to undercut something that simply is misleading. And then another little note on the role of personal background. How do you work in personal background without overshadowing your message, but helping it? And one of the members of CRL is a retired Air Force Major General, and brings to this, pretty rarefied experience, right? Like none of the rest of us have that experience. And in introductory remarks, he just shared his experience as a pilot as it related to his experience of the night and experience of the night sky, but also in this context of high stakes conflict zone and high stakes flying, and how important lighting design, visual function, and safety are related to lighting on the ground and the air. That is highly persuasive and highly credible. So think about, whether you as an individual or in groups, what do you all bring? What do you all bring from your own backgrounds that give you a unique voice something special to contribute that is of value. It might not be completely obvious at the time. Okay, so now we go north. We go north from Norfolk up to Northern Virginia. And it's hard to define Northern Virginia because its boundaries have expanded over the decades. So the actual statistical metropolitan area is pretty big now. But I chose my own definition of the cities and the counties, sort of what I call pretty much the inner suburbs. And that is 2.5 million people. So, you know, this, as a lot of you probably know, this is a hub of population outside of Washington, D.C., where there was rapid suburbanization and urbanization from the 1960s on. A lot of that, well, there's a lot of things that hinged on, and if you've flown into the Washington, D.C. area, you probably flew into Dulles International Airport. And that, you know, that and the timing of that was a factor in a lot of sprawl at that time, and with that, light pollution. It's an area known for traffic congestion, but there's the goal of being more pedestrian friendly and more bikeable. And there's a heavy value on trails and parks. And I think this is true universally around the world, that, the more we lose, the more we realize we've lost something, or the closer we are to losing something. So Northern Virginia, I have joked that Northern Virginia is ahead of the curve in taking corrective action on environmental harms, because they were ahead of the curve in those happening, because of this incredibly rapid and intense development. So there are a lot of things going on there, but for instance, if you go to the Fairfax County Park Authority website, you will see a page about light pollution. So there is certainly, at least at the rhetorical level, a commitment and a concern, which is important because you want to highlight that, right? So Dark Sky, Northern Virginia, Eileen Craigie and others, but Eileen is the driving force there. Lots of goals, always public awareness and education, including fun local events, which I loved reading that, because maybe we don't have as much fun as we should. And yeah, so I thought that was a really positive thing to highlight. Eileen wants to increase Dark Sky membership, partner with other groups, create those coalitions and alliances, protect fragile ecosystems, and focus on some initiatives to create incentives for businesses to do better. So that's Northern Virginia in a nutshell. And I asked Eileen for some of her thoughts on her pitches. And again, Eileen and I are an interest. I think we just learn from each other, because I'm at my computer, and Eileen, I feel like, is just out in the community so much more than I am. And that's where you have to pick and choose, like, what your natural, your wheelhouse is, and where you're comfortable, and where you want to work. And my little my screen keeps getting obscured. Eileen really focuses on light trespass, and this is because this is unfortunately a common problem everywhere, but a real motivation for her, and a serious problem in these Northern Virginia neighborhoods, is the impact of residential lighting and the private homeowners' lighting choices on neighbors. So one of the messages she uses, I don't have the right to trespass onto your property. Why do I have the right to shine light onto your property? And that does tend to get people's attention. There's a logic to that, right? So that's a really helpful message. I'm stressing how little people are protected from light trespass, how it's growing at rates that the jurisdictions never conceived of when the codes were enacted. So that's another, for whether it's the public or whether it's planners, you're saying, look, we just don't have the tools anymore that we need. We're not the county we were 20, 30 years ago. We've got to catch up. We have to address this problem. We have to protect people, right? There is an obligation to take care of the people in your community. She mentions to people if you're having a neighbor to neighbor conversation or just in the community, she reminds them, you don't know who's going to move in next door. Things might be okay now, but they might not be okay in a month. And again, we don't have the ordinance codes that we need to address this problem. And then she mentioned, and I say that I am speaking for everyone that cannot speak for themselves, including the wildlife, plants, and stars. That's an emotional appeal. And you have to kind of read your room or read the person you're talking to. That's important too. And especially if you're in a place where you know that people feel a real connection to their neighborhood park, for instance, their natural area, natural resources, that if you start to, as they start to understand the impact of light pollution and light pollution as a form of pollution, that becomes, that becomes more potent and effective with some people. That's the thing. You're not going to get everybody with a single message. So this is something this was just off the top of my head. Some tips and reminders, things that as I worked on this came to mind for me. That if you're communicating with officials, elected officials, who you are their constituent and they're interested in you as a voter, or the administrators and planners who are the public servants in your community, it's good to appeal to their obligation to the community and their constituents. Just a reminder of their responsibility. This is their job to do. And then it's an opportunity to lead, giving them that, most people who run for office, there's some degree of ego there, right? So this opportunity to lead, to make a mark, right? To have something that they can brag about. That can be effective. Talking about responsible community-friendly lighting as part of the social contract. That's something I hadn't really dawned on me before, this idea of the social contract, but the importance of lighting, this underappreciated, under-respected element of our built environment that affects everybody, affects the aesthetics of our communities, the character of them, how comfortable you are, how safe, whether you can drive comfortably at night or sit outside at a cafe at night. Like, we deserve this. This is actually a right, and it's part of something that we owe to our communities. Safety is key. So you don't want to dodge the issue of safety. The issue of crime is really complex and requires a lot of nuance. So it can be a little bit of a high wire act in conversation. But if you start with safety, everybody understands glare. Everybody experiences glare, right? I mean, we know what that is like, and especially if you connect it to headlight glare, and build out, to street lighting and commercial lighting and so forth. That is a universal human experience. And from there, talk about enhanced visibility, protecting visual function and visual comfort, and then giving them the evidence and some of the great visuals, the images, photographs that exist to demonstrate that. Definitely talk about health and well-being, particularly as it relates to light trespass, but do be evidence-based with health and disease etiology claims. So this is I'm picky about this, but I think I really recommend that when it comes to, if you're building a presentation or materials or whatever, that a really important resource are Dark Skies State of the Science reports. If you're not familiar with that, they're available on the website, because it will give you up to, really current and very, just very objective, fact-based information. But remember, correlation is not causation, and we don't want to make claims that would undercut our credibility. We are talking about a topic that is heavily invested in science, and we have to represent that accurately. Let's see, the personal and private property rights issue, again, trespass, that cuts across many audiences. It's just the glare and trespass are two things. You might be someplace where they, they have class, class 8, class 9 skies, and motivating them based on dark skies and starry skies is not going to work, but trespass will. So those are things that I think that you can really just emphasize across audiences. And then finally, I would just say that I know that like some of us are from affiliated groups or maybe not affiliated with anybody, but I always remind myself, I mean, that when I give a presentation, that I am representing dark sky and that I want to do that responsibly. So in terms of providing information, I do always include a little component about dark sky itself. People are still, still referring to this, the International Dark Sky Association. And so just, I don't go around trying to push people to become members, although that would be fantastic. But I do want to plug Dark Sky, and I want to be a good, credible representative of the organization. And then also, if you're referencing Dark Sky in any way, to make sure that you're providing, good, accurate, up-to-date information, links, links to the 5 principles, links to the Luminaire program or the ordinances. Just take good care of that so we can get that information out as much as possible. And then finally, in closing, this is Carol Carter at Piedmont Dark Skies shared this with me as well. And she said, mostly I would say that the elevator speech follows what the perceived interest of the audience is. If they're bird people, I focus on the impact of lighting on insects and migration. If safety focuses on the weak link between lights and safety, meaning crime. While seeing the stars resonates with some folks very strongly, not everyone sees that as the most important. And that, that's important to remember. I think that we never want to lose sight of that core mission, but knowing that we have to bring people in through whatever will hook them is something that we always have to keep in mind. So that's it, and we can open it to questions at this point.
Great, thanks a lot, Laura. That was an amazing talk. On behalf of everybody, thanks for your presentation and sharing your wisdom of the mission. That's really great. I know I learned a lot and I have some takeaways. For folks, before we get started with questions, please do take some time, put them into the chat or into the Q&A portion of your screen. If there's anything we can't get to today, because we're just about at 10 minutes, we will be able to get to you offline. And before we get into that, I did just want to mention, we hope that you will stay for networking. We'll keep the doors open for the next 30 minutes after the top of the hour, and open up some breakout rooms so you can connect and get some more questions answered. I just want to say just briefly, Cynthia Johnson had shared a message to record a radio message for International Dark Sky Week on Beaver Island, Michigan. So Cynthia, please share that link again in the chat, folks. If you're interested, please feel free to submit something for the radio there. We also welcome you to celebrate International Dark Sky Week with us. Here's a link for that. And of course, do check out our YouTube channel for any meeting that you missed or this recording once it's out there. So Laura, we'll start with the question now. At the beginning, you had mentioned a lack of elevator pitches. Given that, how do you make new contacts or get connected for those additional opportunities to further the mission?
They just come to me. So in terms of lack of, it's not that there's a lack of elevator pitches, it's that's not my particular skill set. Like
Sure.
coming up with something pitchy that I'm gonna, roll out to a stranger in an elevator, that's not my thing. I think that at the point that we are at here, it's just ambient. I mean, it's just pervading. I'm getting it, like at least, I don't know. I think I've done 5 or 6 presentations this year already, and have another 2 coming up. So I don't need to go looking for it. I don't. That's all I can. That's all I can say about that.
That's fair. And I think you covered it well about understanding who you're talking to. That first part of your pitch per se is connecting with them, getting to know the role, their areas of influence, what will help them make decisions. Perfect. And related to that question, do you partner with dark sky parks or other programs in the state? For example, environmental groups, birding communities. I think you had a few other examples.
Yeah, well, yes. So the dark sky parks, I, I try to I stay in touch with them. Um, I was involved years ago. So Virginia has what's called the Virginia Outdoors Plan, which is a resource planning document that the state does, and it's supposed to happen every 5 years. And in 2018, it finally included dark skies as a scenic resource. And I did an appendix for that. So the new one is out and it's a very different format. And I wasn't involved in that, but that was part of how, and then Stanton River State Park in Southside Virginia, they were just north in the North Carolina. That was the first dark sky park. And that really just like was the starting gun for this interest in dark sky parks. So, but I didn't even know it was happening. I mean, that was the weird. There was a little bit of there's some disconnects there, but I am connected to all the dark sky parks. I try to be available as a resource. Last year, I did a call with just pulled all the managers together. There's also turnover with staff. It's not uncommon. I have one dark sky park in particular that I'm very close to because it was my backyard. For the first, I grew up north of what became the state park and lived south of it, Sky Meadows State Park. And so, and I'm physically there in the area on a monthly basis. So I do help where I can. So the partnerships, right now, for instance, we've got the street lighting coalition where we've connected these groups from different communities. Also, Northern Virginia Bird Alliance launched oh, Eileen, help me out there. A bird safe program that we're a supporter of. So, yes, to the degree that I can, in terms of just time. Thank you, Eileen. Lights out, of course. Like that shouldn't be hard. So yeah, always looking for, and I think more so now. One of the things I'm babbling, but one of the things that I have in my mind right now is the importance of getting the existing environmental organizations to care about light pollution. We have amazing organizations in Virginia, really strong, long organizations that have been around for decades, at the regional level in particular. And I don't expect them to take up light pollution as a priority, but definitely want them to start addressing these really sort of flagship organizations that address environmental damage and land conservation and growth and all these things. So to make a short answer very long, yes. Just not as much as I'd like to, because we're all volunteers.
Fair. Yeah. And for my local chapter, it's the same opportunity. It's getting to know these folks, hearing about their events, co-speaking, co-tabling at different items. And that just provides more opportunity, more partners, more allies that you can find. That's great. Here's one from a little different area. We've seen multiple reports that astrotourism is on the rise, or the interest in it. How do we make that work for our mission? And you can speak related to, of course, Virginia, Laura.
Well, I think Highland County is a great example. And I think like Mike Bedwell will be a much better person to answer that question. But if you are in a place that still has dark skies, that's an asset. And you have to start defining it as such, promoting that with leaders, promoting that leaders, elected leaders, business leaders, making the case for that. And I know I've talked to people at Dark Sky about this before, trying to find the data, right? Like the more we can get that, and I know there's been some out there, not within the United States, and I think there was an example in the UK, and I can't remember which dark sky place, but I think the more we could get good data on the economic benefits of a dark sky community, or a dark sky park, that would be great.
For sure, for sure. That's what the officials ask for is show me the data. I will support you, but I also need to prove it. Yep. And there's been some great data coming out of France based
Okay.
off the national law that went into place. Hopefully folks have been able to find that. So understandably in Virginia, there's also a huge military presence, as one user put it. Has any been progress been made with the military about using proper lighting?
Not that I've attempted. I think
Yeah.
yes. I wish Joe from Norfolk's CRL could speak to that. Like I can't take on the military. I'm taking on Dominion. So, but I think, and under current circumstances, I don't think maybe this is the time to throw oneself into that fray. But I think that's, yes, I think that would be great, right? And I think there's probably a lot we don't know about how lighting has been addressed in certain
Mhm.
environments. So yes, there's potential everywhere.
Yeah. At the end of the day, these are just people, more public awareness, more opportunities to promote the mission, to get out great materials like Nightscape that will, maybe get on someone's mind that knows that person or knows that right connection and can further the mission. So folks, please take a moment to submit any more questions, but we will transition to networking time now. Laura, thanks again so much for coming out and talking to us today. I learned so much, and on behalf of the network, we really appreciate everything you're doing out in Virginia and for the community at large.